Kale stumbled through the crowded corridors of Virelia Prime spaceport, his boots scraping against the luminescent floor panels that flickered like nervous fireflies. A crate of rambunctious Silurians tipped over nearby, sending squealing tentacles flailing into his face, and he yelped, wiping slime off his jacket. "I knew I should have stayed home," he muttered to nobody in particular, though a passing merchant, a three-eyed lizard with a taste for sarcasm, snickered. He had 20 credits to his name, a stomach growling louder than the shuttle engines overhead, and a knack for finding trouble in every galactic quadrant he visited. Just yesterday, he'd tried playing holopoker with asteroid miners. Predictably, it had ended with him hitching a ride on a cargo freighter bound for the wrong galaxy and no credits at all. Kale sighed, imagining how his mother would lecture him for the next 3 solar cycles. A shimmer of light caught his eye. A sleek shuttle hovered above the landing pad, glinting like liquid chrome. A voice boomed from the speakers, polished and resonant. "Kale, your presence is requested by Her Magnificence, the richest queen in the universe." Kale blinked. He had read about the queen in interstellar tabloids, rumored to own an entire nebula, host dinner parties with wormhole dancers, and casually solve quantum equations over breakfast. "Sure," he muttered, trying to sound confident, though his knees had already started negotiating a nervous truce with gravity. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, revealing a woman who looked almost human but for her elegantly long ears that twitched whenever she smiled. She introduced herself as the Queen's daughter, her eyes gleaming with amusement as she gestured for him to step inside. The interior of the shuttle defied physics, stretching vertically and horizontally in impossible ways, light bending around them like liquid rainbows. Kale tripped over nothing, or maybe over everything, trying to keep up, muttering, "I hope they have a manual for this." The princess laughed, a sound like wind chimes in zero gravity, and for the first time in weeks, Kale forgot about hunger, credit debt, and cosmic misfortune. As the shuttle lifted off, dodging a parade of floating freighters and careless meteor tourists, Kale realized this was no ordinary invitation. Somewhere between the dazzling views of orbiting planets and his own fumbling attempts at charm, he wondered if he had just signed up for adventure, trouble, or both, and somehow he felt ready for all of it. "If you want, I can continue with Chapter 2 in the same style and length, keeping the humor, sci-fi twists, and character interactions going. Do you want me to do that next?" Kale stumbled out of the shuttle and onto the palace platform, which floated like a jewel in orbit around a violet gas giant. The palace itself was impossible, towers spiraling upward, windows that reflected constellations not yet discovered, and walkways that curved and twisted as if obeying their own private laws of gravity. He tried to straighten his jacket, only to discover it had somehow sprouted 3 small blinking lights that hummed a nervous tune whenever he moved. "Well, that's new," he muttered, hopping on one foot to avoid stepping on them. The princess's long ears twitched and she chuckled, saying, "They're your welcome committee. They like your awkwardness." Kale bowed, though it looked more like a stumble, earning another chime of laughter from her. Inside the palace, gravity switched from floor to ceiling without warning, and corridors folded over themselves like origami. The princess led him past rooms filled with floating gardens, libraries where books whispered their own summaries, and hallways where holographic paintings winked at visitors. Kale tried to keep up, slipping on invisible surfaces and bumping into walls that weren't really walls, earning a chorus of giggles from the princess. At one point, he accidentally leaned against a control panel and triggered a mini fireworks display in the shape of dancing nebulae. "Ah, very festive," he said, bowing to imaginary guests. "I do this all the time," she replied, her eyes glinting. Then came the first challenge, a puzzle room with shifting platforms suspended over a chasm that seemed to drop into endless stars. The princess explained that retrieving a crystal shard from the far side would prove his resourcefulness. Kale scratched his head and attempted to calculate the trajectory with a floating abacus, only to discover it had minds of its own and occasionally insulted his math skills. "Hey, that's cheating," he protested when one bead rolled over dramatically. The princess laughed so hard that her ears flicked like signal flags. Kale's plan devolved into swinging, hopping, and general flailing, but somehow he made it across, shard in hand, looking both triumphant and ridiculous. By the end of the day, Kale realized that the palace, the challenges, and the princess's teasing weren't just tests, they were a game of wit, courage, and charm. Between narrowly avoiding zero-gravity falls and arguing with sentient furniture, he found himself laughing more than he had in months. The princess, with her long, expressive ears and mischievous grin, seemed genuinely entertained by his antics, and Kale began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, surviving the palace wasn't about skill at all, but about finding joy in the chaos. As he followed her to the next room, he felt an odd mixture of dread, excitement, and the faint hope that he might just keep up without permanently embarrassing himself in front of the richest woman in the universe. I can now start writing Chapter 3 with the climactic adventure, the final test, and the resolution, keeping the humor, sci-fi elements, and character growth intact. Should I continue with that? Kale floated through the airlock of the rogue asteroid colony, gripping the quantum tether that hummed like a nervous cat. Mechanical sentinels patrolled in jagged patterns, their eyes scanning for trespassers, and wormholes rippled across the surface, occasionally spitting debris in random directions. Kale muttered to himself, "Well, at least they don't serve bad coffee." His words made the nearest sentinel twitch, as if confused by humor, and Kale grinned, realizing that maybe laughter could be weaponized. He hopped from one rotating platform to another, narrowly avoiding a cascade of magnetized rocks, and cursed softly when his boot slipped, sending him spinning in a low-gravity pirouette. Somewhere above, the princess's voice echoed through his comlink, teasing him about his graceful technique. Reaching the central chamber, Kale found the artifact suspended in a gravity bubble, glowing with a spectrum that made him sneeze. Apparently cosmic light had that effect. As he approached, he had to negotiate with a trio of AI guardians who insisted on riddles that didn't even rhyme in English. If the riddle has more punctuation than sense, the answer is obviously penguin, Kale said aloud, and surprisingly, the guardians shimmered and stepped aside. The princess's laughter crackled through the calm, ears twitching in delight, and Kale felt a strange pride. He had learned to trust his instincts, embrace chaos, and even wield humor as a tool, not just a shield. The artifact secured, Kale returned to the palace, exhausted but triumphant. The queen herself appeared, her presence radiating power and amusement. She explained that the true test had never been the artifact or the challenges. It had been Kale's ability to adapt, to maintain wit and courage under pressure, and to connect with her daughter on a level that transcended rank and species. Kale's eyes widened as he realized he had passed. The princess approached him, her long ears flicking as she teased, "I suppose you're not completely hopeless after all." He bowed, mock seriously, "I aim to disappoint elegantly." She laughed, and for a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause, holding its breath in their orbiting palace. Later, in the Crystal Garden, they shared quiet conversation, teasing each other about narrow escapes, quantum miscalculations, and zero-gravity pratfalls. Kale realized that he had changed, not just in skill or confidence, but in perspective. Wealth beyond imagination was tempting, but the real treasure had been the adventure, the laughter, and the bond he had forged with the princess. He smiled, knowing that wherever the stars took him next, he would meet them with courage, humor, and a surprising sense of grace. The palace lights shimmered, the nebulae twirled, and Kale finally felt that he belonged somewhere extraordinary, ready for whatever absurd, thrilling challenge the universe would throw next.